as soon as you tie human personhood to our ability to rationally think,
Right.
then you end up with a sliding scale of humanity where some people are more human or more the image of God than others.
Right.
If someone is born and they're cognitively challenged,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they have maybe a developmental disability, are they less human?
Right.
Are they less the image of God?
Carmen, it's been so great to have you
Aw.
at Regent this week.
Thank you.
Now, but tell us a little bit though, what do you normally do? Tell us a little bit about your regular work and where you normally are.
Yeah, I am professor of Old Testament at Biola University in Southern California. I teach undergrad Bible,
Yep.
which is a load of fun.
Yep. I was going to say, which you find troublesome and so
Oh, no.
burdensome. Yeah.
I have the best job in the world, as I regularly say. And I'm working on a couple of book projects. I have a YouTube channel. I release weekly videos on YouTube. I do a lot of podcast interviews.
You do?
Lots of fun stuff to keep me busy.
Oh man, book projects, and then you've written a book on the image of God.
Yes.
And it's called Being God's Image, not to be
Yes.
confused with bearing God's name.
Right.
So it's not bearing God's image; it's being. No,
Yes.
is that right?
That's right.
Being
You
God's
got
image.
it. Yeah, it's not bearing, it's being.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell us, why does that matter to you? What caused you to want to write about the image of God?
Yeah, I am convinced that the Old Testament is the foundation of human identity and vocation, that we find out in Genesis why humans are on this planet and what we're here to do. And I feel like the imago Dei, or the image of God, helps us to get at our core human identity.
Yeah.
And what our purpose is in life. And I think that I've observed over the years some serious misconceptions about the image of God that have practical consequences that concern me.
Right.
And I felt like this would be a way to resituate the conversation, kind of bring a bit more precision, and then work out the implications of that.
Right. And then why is it we might hear, in our kind of Christian understanding, sort of we're made in the image of God, or we might be just bearing God's image. Why is the sort of the as part in terms of
we're being made as God's image?
Yeah. And in that sort of sense, that what are the prerequisites for being, not prerequisites, but what is it that makes us image bearers?
Yes. I think that, so you're right, most people talk about the image of God as, they say we're image bearers.
Right.
That's a very common way of talking about it. I think that's problematic because if you're bearing something, it's something you're carrying, you could set it down.
Yeah, right.
And I believe that every human being is the image of God. That's our core identity, and it's not something that we can set down. It's not something that we can lose or have diminished in any way.
Yeah.
And I think what's at stake is, or you asked, what does it mean to be the image?
Right.
It's, I think, essential to our human embodiment. Like, the fact that we have a human body is
Right.
what makes us the image of God.
Yeah.
And so we are the representatives of God's presence in the world.
Right.
We signify, just by being here, that a creator God is overseeing all things.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the starting place for my conversation about the image of God in my book. And then I try to work out, what difference does that make for our relationships? What difference does it make for creation care, for lots of things?
Yeah. You said that there's misconceptions or things where we haven't understood what it means to be human in this way, that then causes things to go awry, or it has kind of consequences that we don't like or that are not good.
Yes.
Can you give us some examples of where you're thinking
Sure.
where that if we haven't understood that, how that plays out?
Yeah, a lot of times people talk about the image in terms of human capacities.
Right.
And one of the most common ones is our intellect.
Yeah.
That, there's the famous saying by Descartes, I think, therefore I am.
Right.
This idea that our human personhood is grounded in our thinking. The problem with saying that is, first of all, that it's unbiblical. But second of all, there's that. But second of all, as soon as you tie human personhood to our ability to rationally think,
Right.
then you end up with a sliding scale of humanity where some people are more human or more the image of God than others.
Right.
If someone is born and they're cognitively challenged,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they have maybe a developmental disability, are they less human?
Right.
Are they less the image of God? And I want to say no, every human being is the image of God regardless of their intellect, regardless of their relational skills, regardless of their moral compass.
Right.
You know, so all of the other ways of talking about the image that tie it to a capacity then end up with some who are,
Right.
they end up with a hierarchy.
Right.
Some who are more human than others,
Yeah.
or who have more dignity than others.
Yeah.
And I want to say every human being has equal dignity,
Right.
regardless of ability, regardless of relationship with God, even.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even ability. Yeah. How are you seeing this? So if those are the ways where we might sort of kind of misunderstand that, and therefore from a place of misunderstanding then have consequences. What are some of the implications for us to think through? Say something like creation care, or artificial intelligence, or gender roles. You talked a little bit about disability.
You're picking all the hot
I'm picking all the hot
topics,
topics. You don't
right.
have to talk about all of them.
Which I do in the book as well. I pick a lot of hot topics because what's interesting about the Imago Dei is it's so foundational that it ends up talking to everything and has implications for everything.
Right.
So creation care is at the very heart of what Genesis is talking about. Every human being is the image of God, male and female are God's image, and then that implies that we have a task to rule over creation and to provide for the flourishing of other humans,
Yep.
of animals, and of the natural world.
Right.
And so as we walk along here and there's trash along the street,
Yeah.
this represents a failure of humans to properly steward the environment that we were given.
Right.
Sometimes in some pockets of Christianity, there's a sense in which people think environmentalism is something not necessary for gospel. Like
Right.
we don't have to think about the environment because we're gospel focused or gospel centered. And I want to say right here in the Bible, we're told to care for creation.
Right.
From the beginning, that's part of the human task that we're given.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that remains important.
Yeah.
You named lots of other
I know, I
issues.
had a
What do you
few.
want to tackle next?
Well, I mean, artificial intelligence, AI. Maybe.
Yeah. Is this something that worries you about the state of our world, or?
Well, no. What's there to be worried about? Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's interesting how many people actually are nervous about AI because it seems to be replacing human uniqueness. If a
Right.
machine is able to think better than I am,
Right.
part of what we think makes us special is that we can create things. Well, now you could just plug it into ChatGPT,
Yeah.
and it comes up with a sermon for you, or it comes up with a blog post or an assignment.
Yeah.
And so then now,
Or a
heaven
public
forbid.
lecture, or a class.
right. So then what makes humans unique if a computer can produce something even better than I could have produced myself?
Yeah. Right.
But if we have clarified that human identity is not grounded in my ability to think, but it's grounded in my human body, human embodiment,
Yeah.
then I can't be replaced by a machine because it doesn't have a human body.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm less worried about artificial intelligence than some of my peers because I think my worth or dignity does not depend on being able to think better than machines.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing about
Yeah.
AI that I find interesting is that the computer can't actually generate new thinking. It's just recombining stuff that's already out there.
Yeah. So we're actually adding right now. We're adding a little bit more content.
We are adding right now in
So-
this conversation to
What does Carmen Imes think about AI?
Right.
Right.
So if somebody asks Chat what Carmen Imes thinks about the image of God, we're feeding it more accurate information than what it had to work with before. So
this is perfect.
I feel a sense of compulsion actually to produce more good content.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the more good content that's out there, the better the quality of what AI will generate.
Right. Which comes from you as a human.
Right.
Someone
Right.
who is as God's image, who is God's image.
Right. So it's indirect.
Yeah.
But I actually think that I can contribute to human flourishing by feeding the algorithm.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
That is a good. What do other people think about that? Do people think you're crazy to think that?
think maybe
Or have people push back
I
on
think
you?
maybe people think I'm a bit more ambitious than average.
Just like feed more content.
Just feed more content.
Do more Torah Tuesdays. You know, just keep doing that.
The more Torah Tuesdays we have, the more the Torah information out there is going to be good.
Totally. Okay, if we were to pick one more kind of realm, what would you want to speak about in terms of where the impact of understanding ourselves in this way?
You know, I think disability is one that's been really compelling to me as I've worked on this question, because I think a lot of times we ignore the question of disability in the church, and we've unquestioningly bought into this idea that there's a certain ideal human, they're the ones that the world is built for, and everybody else just needs to do the best they can.
Right.
And so we have churches, church buildings, institutional Christian institutions that are actually not built to be accessible, that actually don't follow code, because churches and Christian institutions have fought to not have to build things to code, or they don't want to have to adapt or remodel in order to make things accessible. We have secular institutions that are leading the way in things like having alternate text on the website so that someone who's blind can have the website read to them. And sometimes our Christian institutions are way behind in making our resources accessible to those with disabilities. So adding subtitles, that sort of thing. And it's an area of learning for me. This is not something I'm super good at, but I've just become aware of how little we pay attention to it, and how important it is to consider. I mean, the church should be leading the way in these areas, in making the gospel accessible, making our communities accessible to everyone. And if we're convinced that every human being is the image of God, then that's not just, well, the able-bodied humans are the image of God, and everybody else is just going to have to make do. I think the other thing that happens with the disability conversation is, if we're not aware of disability, that people with disability are full-fledged humans and have so much to offer, we begin to buy into the lie that I have to be self-sufficient, and that the goal is to be independent and self-sufficient. And so I think we miss out so much. And if we become more inclusive, we discover, like, it's actually okay not to be able to do everything myself, and interdependence is a better goal than self-sufficiency. And so I just want to see the church recover that.
Totally. I've got another question for you.
Sure.
It's got nothing to do with the image of God, but it does have to do with what's written on your arm.
Oh, sure.
So you've got a tattoo on your arm there.
I do, yes.
And it's in Hebrew.
It is.
Course. What does it say?
It says belonging to Yahweh.
What made you write that?
Well, my previous book is called Bearing God's Name, and so now I do bear God's name, literally. So I write in the book about how at Sinai, when Israel comes to Mount Sinai, they are being brought into covenant with Yahweh, and it's like he's placing his name on them to say, you belong to me. Now, don't bear my name in vain. Represent me well among the nations. So I say in my book that all covenant members have an invisible tattoo. And I just decided to make my invisible tattoo visible.
So good. Does anyone ever ask you in the grocery store, what's that about?
Every now and then. I don't do the grocery shopping. My husband does.
That's fantastic.
So I haven't had, it is fantastic, actually. I haven't had a lot of conversations with people who didn't already know me and know about my work. And so then they're usually like, oh, of course that's what it says. You are the lady who talks about that all the time.
That's so great. What are you working on next? So what else are you thinking about at the moment? For the good of the church and the good of our understanding of what it means to be followers of Jesus in the world right now?
My biggest project right now is a commentary on Exodus for Baker Academic. I'm about 33% done. And it's a long book. I've already been working on it for 4 years. So it's going to be probably a while longer. But I love it, and I'm learning so much about the literary design of the book, the theological themes. It's really rich. And so that's why I started my YouTube channel, because the book is such a long book, and it's going to take me so long.
So I decided, people need to hear about this.
People need to hear this stuff. This is actually really cool. So every week I release a video that says, here's what I'm learning in this part of Exodus. So
is there a question that you're wrestling with right now?
About Exodus?
About Exodus?
I've just finished or just gotten a draft of the chapters on the firstborn. So
Yeah.
the death of the firstborn, but then the Passover ritual and the dedication of the firstborn,
Yeah.
the firstborn Israelites to God. And so one of the things I'm wrestling with is, are the firstborn male? Or is
Yeah.
this firstborn male and female?
Yeah.
Like those who die in Egypt, is it just children? Is it all ages? Like
Right.
So I have questions about like the parameters of the plague on the firstborn, but also like what does it look like to be dedicated to God?
Yeah.
So
Man.
it's an interesting, I call Exodus my sandbox because I just feel like I get to play and just like discover new things and
totally.
be curious. So
Hey, Carmen, can you please keep being intrigued about Exodus?
Yes.
Keep being intrigued about the Bible. And thanks so much for being with us this week. Thanks so much for
Yeah.
having this conversation.
thank you for
Great to be
having
with you.
me. It's been really a great week to be here.